This video today is going to be about helping people understand the difference between emotional support dogs and service dogs, and we'll also be talking about therapy dogs in this video as well. So it is so common for so many people to not understand that emotional support dogs or emotional support animals are not the same thing as service dogs. I've even seen people who have service dogs that don't understand the difference between these two terms. And then of course the term therapy dogs gets thrown in there as well. And there's these three different types of working dogs, and everybody really confuses all of them. So it's actually really simple. Okay, so a service dog is a dog that has been trained to perform a task for an individual that has a disability. So for example, a diabetic alert dog is a service dog that has been trained to help its handler control their blood sugar. And the way that they do this is by telling the handler when their blood sugar has dropped. So you can see that in this example, the dog has been taught to perform a task for its handler. The task is alerting to low blood sugar, and the handler's disability is diabetes. Now let's talk about emotional support dogs. Emotional support dogs are dogs that help their handler by helping them relieve stress, anxiety, and just feel better, because animals make us happy, right? Now, an emotional support dog has not been trained to do anything for their handler. The way that an emotional support dog helps a person is just by being there. And we can definitely relate to this because we love our pets, and part of the reason that we have them is because they make our lives better. So somebody who has a really stressful job or just has some sort of thing going on in their life that causes them a lot of stress will go home to their dog and hug them and cuddle them and pet them, and that will make them feel better. So that's an emotional support dog. They're not trained to do anything special, but they do something very special for their handler. And then of course some people throw in the word therapy dog and they say, oh, my dog is my therapy dog because he makes me feel better. That's actually completely incorrect. Unless you're taking your dog with you to hospitals or nursing homes to visit people in courtrooms, your dog is not a therapy dog. Your dog might help you, but the term therapy dog does not apply to your dog. Therapy dogs do go through training. They are trained to go out into public, and they are trained to interact with other people and behave in all types of situations. So therapy dogs will go to hospitals and visit children with cancer. They'll go to nursing homes and make the elderly feel better by just being there for them to pet. And they'll also go to places like courtrooms and schools, things like that. Some therapy dogs go into schools to help children learn how to read because it's easy to read to a dog. They're not going to be judging you, so children are more comfortable reading out loud to animals. So therapy dogs are trained, but they're not trained to perform a job, to perform a task. They don't help somebody with a disability. They just provide emotional comfort to a lot of people. Sometimes you'll also see therapy dogs going into airports where people are very stressed out from layovers, things like that. They'll also take therapy dogs to disaster areas. So if there's been a hurricane or a tornado or even a school shooting. So therapy dogs are used in a huge variety of situations. But for somebody who's at home and they're like, oh, my dog makes me feel better, it's not a therapy animal, it's more of an emotional support animal. But I am going to be talking about the actual legal terms of emotional support animals and service dogs. Service dogs are covered under the Americans with Disability Act. And this means that they are given access rights so that they can go everywhere with their handler. And legally, they are considered medical equipment because they help their handler with a disability. So these are dogs that have been trained to guide the blind, to help people in wheelchairs, to help people that can't walk, and all types of disabilities. There is just so many. So the Americans with Disability Act, or the ADA, is there to protect the rights of those with disabilities that need service dogs in order to have a independent life. These dogs are highly trained. They go through months or even years of training. So they're not only trained to perform a task for their handler that has a disability, they are also trained to behave in public, and they're trained for public access rights. They are trained to be able to handle a wide variety of situations. And with service dogs, training is super important because the handler's life depends on the service dog. So they need to be very well trained and to still listen to their handler, even if it's a chaotic situation like a grocery store with a bunch of screaming kids pointing and saying, "Oh, look, there's a dog!" Now, emotional support animals, like I said, do not have any training. And these animals are not able to go into public places that do not allow pets the way that service animals are allowed to. Emotional support animals do not have access rights. So somebody with an emotional support animal cannot take them to grocery stores or the movie theater or anywhere that would not normally allow pets. There is one place that you can take an emotional support animal, and that is on an airplane with the correct paperwork. So since now that you know that service animals are allowed to go into no pet places and emotional support animals are not allowed to go into no pet places, you're probably wondering why somebody would want to legally recognize their pet as an emotional support animal. And this is really for housing. When you are renting somewhere that does not allow pets, you can have an emotional support animal regardless of those housing rules. Now in this situation, breed restrictions, weight restrictions do not apply to emotional support animals, and they cannot charge you a pet deposit. There are still some certain situations in which emotional support animals are not allowed in housing, or you would have to pay a fee. And all of that is explained in how to make your pet an emotional support animal in that video that I made, which can be found in the iCards, and I will link it down below in the description as well. And that covers all of the legal rights for ESAs and all of that information. Any type of animal can be an ESA, and so really the only reason you would need to register your pet as an ESA is if you were having problems having them in your housing and it's something that you really need. And also if you do need that pet in order to feel comfortable flying. However, sometimes that's not always beneficial, because if you are going to be traveling and going to be staying in hotels and going to restaurants, your ESA is not allowed to go with you to no pet places. So if you do want to travel with your pet that is legally recognized as an ESA, you do need to think ahead and plan for all of those situations and places that your pet will not be allowed to go with you. Now, an important thing to remember about service dogs is that if you do have a disability, that does qualify you to get a service dog, but that doesn't mean that your dog is a service dog automatically. Like I keep saying, they have to be trained to perform a task. Now, another situation in which people get very confused with emotional support dogs and service dogs is when it comes to psychological disabilities. Now, if you have a psychological disability, you do still qualify for a service dog. Now, some people think that if they have PTSD or anxiety or something like that, that they have to go with an emotional support dog because it's an emotional thing. But that's not really what the term means. Remember, emotional support dogs are just there to comfort you. They don't actually do anything for you, and they can't go anywhere with you. So if you have a psychological disability in which you need your dog to be with you constantly and to do things for you, then you would need a service dog. So having a psychological disability does not mean that you only qualify for an emotional support animal. You can get a service animal. But remember, I keep saying, task training for a service dog. If you have a psychological disability and you want to have a service dog, the dog does need to perform a certain task to help you with your disability. And really, there are plenty of examples in which service dogs do help people with psychological disabilities. A big one that definitely comes to mind is service dogs for PTSD. These dogs are trained for our veterans, and they accompany them everywhere because they are service animals, so they do have access rights, and these dogs are trained to perform tasks. And this is where I've seen even people with service dogs getting confused. If they have a service dog for an anxiety disorder, sometimes they call it an emotional support dog. However, calling your service dog an emotional support dog actually takes away your access rights, because if it's not a service dog, you can't go into no pet places. Unfortunately, people with emotional support dogs are often very confused, and they think that because they have an emotional support animal, they can take it with them to public places that do not allow pets. So very often you see people taking in birds or dogs that are just very misbehaving, and rabbits and all types of other animals into no pet places. Often people with emotional support animals are very confused as to what the actual laws are regarding these animals. And it's no help that a lot of times the doctors that prescribe prescribe orders for service animals and emotional support animals don't know the difference between the two. But regardless of what a doctor said or what someone else said or what they registered online, there are certain laws that do control the use of service animals and emotional support animals. These are legal terms, so regardless of a doctor writing a note saying that an emotional support animal can accompany this person everywhere, it does not mean that that is actually something that is real, that they can do, or that it is legal. Very often you will see people that have emotional support animals trying to take these animals into no pet places because they just don't understand the difference between service animals and emotional support animals, which can be very frustrating and does directly harm those with actual service animals. Service animals, like I've said, have gone through so much training. They know how to behave in public. Emotional support animals don't know how to behave in public. And so often it gives service animals a really bad name because, again, even business owners don't know the difference between service animals and emotional support animals. So they have somebody come in with a emotional support rat, and then the rat poops and urinates everywhere and causes other customers to leave, and it's a horrible experience. So then the next person, comes in with an actual trained service dog, and the business owner doesn't want to let them in because they've had such a bad experience with other people bringing in animals claiming that they're, registered as blah, blah, blah. So this is why you should never pass off an animal as a service animal or take an emotional support animal into no pet places. It just causes a lot of problems for people that do have real service animals. So emotional support dogs are not covered under the ADA. In fact, if you go to the website and look at frequently asked questions, they do say that providing emotional comfort is not a task for a service dog, so it doesn't count. They are, however, protected by the Air Carrier Access Act, which lets them be able to board airplanes, and as well as the Fair Housing Act, which allows them to be able to be in housing with their handler. And that's why I said the only reason you would want your pet to legally be recognized as an emotional support animal is if you needed it for housing, because other than that, there's really no benefit to it. Now, a lot of people will get upset about this topic because they think something's a certain way, but all of this can actually be found on government websites. These are legal terms. Now, none of this is based on opinion. This is not my opinion. This is not your doctor's opinion. This is all based on federal law. Now, links to all of that will be in the description down below. I do have videos, like I said, about how to make your pet an emotional support animal, and that will go through all of the legal terms, what your rights are, and how to have them legally recognized as an emotional support animal. I do also have a video about how to make your dog a service dog if you want to check that out. That will be in the iCard, and all that information will also be linked in the description down below. I also have another really important video for people to watch that is things that you should not say to service dogs and their handlers. So if you see somebody out in public, at a restaurant, at a grocery store, or wherever it might be that has a service animal, it's important to know how to interact with them and how to not disturb them, because again, the handler's life does depend on the service animal. So that video you can find in the iCard and also in the description down below. Thanks for watching this video, and be sure to share it with somebody so that they can learn what these terms mean. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!